Firstly, I'd like to pass on my condolences to the family and friends of the lady involved in this story. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. So this next account is pretty recent. I've been working on it personally for just short of a year, but I'm getting nowhere fast. Everywhere that I turn seems to be blocked. So I'm hoping that anybody watching this either has an account from the area or they have some information about this story. And if you do, can you please email me at the address that's given at the end of the video? Thank you, much appreciated. On the 10th of January 2022, a news report appeared online. It wasn't a big report, 3 or 4 paragraphs long, but the headline caught my eye immediately. Woman found dead with body partially eaten by fox or badger. Now, as soon as I read the article, I was curious and suspicious because something was not sitting right with me about this. It appears that the still unnamed 55-year-old lady had placed a call to the AA. The AA is a breakdown service in the UK, and she rang them at 11:20 p.m. on the 18th of December 2021. She reported that her car had broken down in Moncton in Ayrshire, which is in Scotland. When the AA arrived at the scene, and there's no specific time given for their arrival, they found that the vehicle was abandoned on an unclassified road. So they called it into the police as an abandoned vehicle, because there was nobody about at all, not a sign of anybody. Then on the 19th of December, around 25 to 5 in the afternoon, the police found the lady's body in a field a mile away from her car. It was stated that she'd been partially eaten, and then her death was reported as no suspicious circumstances. Apparently she'd just rung the AA, then gone for a stroll and sadly died. And the weather that evening was dry and it was a cool 6 degrees Celsius. So my first problem with this incident is that the recovery service would put a lone woman down as a priority and they'd make an arrangement to keep in constant contact with her. I've been in this situation, so I know that this is what is usually done for safety reasons. So what occurred on this occasion? The second problem I have is, why did she leave the car and walk across the fields? She wasn't from the area. She lived 53 miles away in Airdrie, which is in another part of Scotland. And if she felt the need to get away from the vehicle for whatever reason, why didn't she follow the road? What made her want to go across the fields and not stick with the road? Especially as help was on the way. I mean, she'd rung in at 11:20 at night. It was dark, obviously. She needed to go to the toilet. She would have gone somewhere near the car, so what made her have to leave the car? There's no mention of how she died either. Why not just say it was a heart attack or it was an injury? Why say no suspicious circumstances? Because to me, what happened after her death was really suspicious. There's another point to this, and that is that neither foxes or badgers will predate on fresh meat. Sorry about that, but it's true. They won't touch anything that's fresh. Badgers, I don't know about badgers, but foxes have a habit of taking any fresh meat that they find away and burying it until it kind of decays a bit. I've asked around people who kind of know UK wildlife, and even they've said that neither of those animals, which are the biggest carnivores, I suppose, that we've got, neither of those animals would go near a human body. Not that's just died. So that leads me to the question that, is there more to this story than meets the eye? And in my opinion, that would be a yes. Because for a start, there's been no follow-up to this incident at all. No post-mortem results, no name given, nothing. And believe me, I've looked high and low, and there's absolutely nothing out there. I mean, there have been plenty of other gruesome deaths that have been followed up on, so why not this one? Is it something that they're trying to cover up for some reason? But the story doesn't quite end for me there. I was helping a friend out at the time, converting all the accounts from his 4 published books into code to be put into a database on his website. And I was just getting to the last 3 or 4 accounts in the 4th book. And one of them just made me go hot and cold. And it was like a massive penny dropping. I'm going to read the account as it's written, exactly as it's written in the book. But you'll see why it got me. I'll read this account directly as it appeared in Truth Proof 4. Back in 1999, I was 18 and worked as a trainee administrator at British Aerospace in Moncton, Prestwick, Scotland. It was a military compound back then, and we had HMS Gannet in the same compound, albeit separated by fencing and armed guards. Air Sea Rescue was based there too, as well as RAF and Navy personnel. That's what makes my encounter so strange. How can something that's not meant to exist actually get into a high-security, military-restricted area that's right next to Prestwick Airport? My encounter happened around 7:15 a.m. on a cold, dark January morning as I walked from the back security gate to the office I worked in. It usually took me 8 to 10 minutes. As soon as I started walking, I knew I was being watched. I took a left and walked on for a bit and then heard this big crashing noise over to my right. It came from the side of the trainee apprentice block. I got such a fright I stopped in my tracks. Then a few seconds later I noticed a shape appear at the doors of the old woodshed, which was integrated into the apprentice block, about 10 metres away. I thought someone had fallen and got injured, as it looked like they were crawling out. So I took a step closer and the shape made a weird noise, not a human noise, but a growl. I saw that it wasn't a person, it looked like a huge dog, like a Newfoundland. My friend had one, but this one was massive compared to his dog George. It took a few steps forwards, then it stopped. I remember looking round to see if anybody else was there, but no one was about. When I looked back, literally a few seconds later, it was standing on 2 legs, but a lot closer than before, maybe 5 metres away from me. It was huge. It was standing slightly hunched, but must have been about 7 foot tall, as I'm only 5'3", and it was a total giant compared to me. It had really pointy ears on top of its head. It had dark fur and a massive frame with huge shoulders. Its eye didn't glow yellow, but its face was like something out of American Werewolf in London. I saw the long arms hanging down by its sides. Arms, like human arms. At the end of the arms were hands with claws. The body was massive, but it looked like it had a bit of a waist, which was weird. The legs looked muscular at the top and very long. I don't remember its feet. It started to sniff the air. Thinking about it still gives me the chills. But it didn't move from that spot, and neither did I. I couldn't have moved even if I'd wanted to. It was looking right at me, and it growled again. Thinking about it now, I don't know how I didn't collapse on the spot. My gut instinct had been right. Obviously, adrenaline was pumping and my sensors all went through the roof. The hairs on my arms and neck were all standing on end. I felt like I could hear a pin drop. My heart was pounding in my chest and ears. I've never been so utterly terrified in my life. Then I heard the noise of the mail buggy that drives about with the guy inside. It looks like a golf buggy, but covered over and a bit more sturdy. It appeared from the back of the trainee apprentice building, as that's where the internal mail centre was. The thing obviously heard it too and turned quickly to the side, and it made a growling noise again, except louder, like a snarl, like it was really pissed off. It must have slightly opened its mouth as I saw it incisors hanging down. Then it did a 180-degree turn, took an almighty leap, landed on all fours and disappeared behind a storage container. That was the last I saw it, heading in the opposite direction to me. The witness then went on to describe how the rest of the day unfolded. During that day there were weird goings-on with helicopters flying low and HMS Gannet security going about aerospace in trucks. It just seemed a bit strange as I'd never seen that before. By that time I'd already decided that I wasn't going back for the rest of the week. My mind started overthinking things, so I pretended I wasn't well. I remember dreading the thought of going back to work. I kept going over it in my head. I could hardly sleep. Later in the week, I can't remember what day it was, Mum came into the house and was holding the local newspaper. I'll never forget her words. "Hey, there's been a baboon spotted at Prestwick Airport." I almost fell off the chair. "A what? When?" I asked her. "Just a few days ago," she said. I couldn't believe it. A baboon? Don't they mean a werewolf, I thought. I genuinely thought I'd lost the plot until things started appearing in the local newspapers a few days later. But it wasn't a baboon I saw. As far as I'm concerned, it was a werewolf. It still haunts me to this day, and I'm 40 now. Only a couple of people know, and I've never mentioned anything at work. To be honest, I could barely get through the day. I still have family who work there, so I have to be careful. They would have me locked up if I told them. That same week, sightings started to appear about a large cat or panther around the Coylton area, which is relatively nearby. A horse was attacked at Sundrum Castle, just outside Coylton, and had deep slashes in its side. Things calmed down after a few weeks. Then a few years ago, a black cat was sighted near Drongan. Some folk called it a man-beast, but I kind of already know what it was. It's only a matter of time before it starts again. This was both an incredible and terrifying encounter for the witness, and also it occurred 22 years prior to the 2021 incident of the woman breaking down in the car in the same area. It was like a massive penny dropping for me. I sat back, mouth open and heart hammering in my chest. To me, this was a huge connection between both incidents. At this point, my husband came in from the man cave. He looked at me and frowned. He asked what the matter was, then sat on the arm of the sofa to listen to what I had to say. He's in no way a believer of any of the subjects that I'm involved in or interested in, but he's never ever ridiculed what I believe in. So he sat and listened as I gave him the details of both accounts. He thought for a while and said that if these things did really exist, then surely it would hardly be likely to be the one from 22 years ago that was still alive. So I pointed out that we have absolutely no clue as to what these things are, whether they breed, if they have the capacity for eternal life or what anything. We don't know. So he kind of shrugged and stood up and said, very strange, before leaving me to get on with lunch. So I stood up to go into the kitchen and I felt something really strange on my arm, and when I looked down, there was a blood blister appearing, the size of half a pea, like half a garden pea. And I was like, I hadn't touched anything. I'd been typing all morning. I'd spent 3 hours typing and not touched anything. And it was kind of appearing, and to start with, it appeared as a lump, and then it kind of flattened down. I've still got the scar now. It's only a faint scar, but I've still got the scar from where it was. So I was staring at my arm as I went into the kitchen, and I reached up onto the top of the cupboards to get the sandwich toaster down. And as I reached up, I could see bruises appearing on my arm. So I've included the pictures here, the best ones that I could take. And they were kind of surrounding this blood blister. And I was absolutely astounded because I watched them deepening in colour like they were forming in front of my eyes. So I grabbed my phone. I came in the room and I grabbed my phone and I tried and better tried. I must have had 60 attempts at trying to focus on these bruises. I even thought there was something wrong with the phone camera. So I tried taking photographs of other things and they were coming out perfectly clear. I couldn't get it to... So that basically the photos that I've included are the best ones that I could get of it. So I started getting on with lunch and my husband came back in to put the kettle on, and by this point I was waiting for the sandwich toaster to finish cooking. And I was sort of staring down at my arm and he looked at me and he said, "What the hell's that?" So I held my arm up and he took hold of my arm gently and he's turning it round. He went, "Where have the bruises come from?" I said, "I've no idea." And he said, "It looks like you've been grabbed." I said, "I know." And he said, "But there's only us here." I said, "I know." So then I started sort of thinking, well, is it something that I've become in contact with? Have I made contact with something because of this connection between these two accounts? And it was just completely strange. So then later on, as I'm coming to make tea, I went into the kitchen, just got to the cooker, and it felt like the whole of my right arm, which is where these bruises and the blood blister appeared, was electrified. And when I looked down in the kitchen light, I could see every single tiny little hair, even the microscopic ones, were all stood bolt upright like ramrods off my arm. And it was like the weirdest. I can't even begin to describe the sensation. Possibly like a milder feeling than a TENS machine, like the electric things are used for pain. There was no pain to it. It was just this tingling, weird tingling. So I brushed the hairs with my other hand, and they wouldn't go down flat. They just stood up bolt upright. And this lasted for maybe half an hour to 45 minutes. And then it kind of eased off. Then later on, I was sat just finishing the last bits up of the coding for the database. And I could feel outside this big black energy. It was huge, and it was pacing up and down outside the window. I couldn't see it physically. I could feel it, and it was, I would say, more aggressive than angry. There was an aggressive feeling coming off it. So I got in touch with Deborah Hatswell from BBR, Being Believed Research and Investigation, and another of our members who I'm in a group chat with, give a quick explanation of what had gone on and asked what the hell I should do. And they both came back and said, get your armour up, put your protection up, spiritual protection. And then Debbie said just to let it know that it wasn't welcome and it needed to leave. So I kind of projected that outwards and it took off, but it took off slowly and it was mad at being asked to leave. Didn't like the fact that I'd asked it to leave. So that's my story. So thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed that. Again, could I ask if anybody's got any information about the 2021 incident, or they've got an account of their own from around that area, from Prestwick, Moncton, anywhere around that area, please contact me via the email address at the end of the video. Thank you. Until next time, take care.